Well, thank you, Mr. David Dubay, for joining us today. I just wanted to introduce this is our first episode of this educational series that we're doing. Acart Communications is proud to be hosting and running this, and we're communicating and connecting with entrepreneurs, business owners, philanthropists, and leaders across Canada to talk about not just COVID-19 and the obvious impacts that the pandemic is having on the current reality, but largely what the post-pandemic world will look like, and what does the, I don't want to say new normal, but what does the new reality look like? And I'm very proud and honored to have an amazing first guest on the series. David Dubay has been somebody that's been, a part of my life for close to a decade. Is a very successful Canadian businessman and philanthropist that runs the Concord Group and is the chairman, president of Sportbox. So David, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today. Really excited to dive into some questions with you.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be your inaugural guest on this, and we'll have some fun.
Yeah, fantastic. So I guess we can kind of jump right into it. I'd love to touch on your experience, surrounding both sport and entertainment across both the Canadian market and the US market. It would be great just to get some perspective on you on what you're seeing happening right now as it pertains to COVID-19. Lots of events are not happening, and there's been a real significant impact on both amateur sport and professional sport. What are you seeing right now from your perspective?
Well, I can tell you, Andrew, that I spend many hours a day. It's no longer 20 plus hours a day, which it was probably for the first month of this, but many hours a day, just keeping up with the science, keeping up with the global impact of this. And I can tell you, in the sporting world of all things, that was one of the first things that ground to a halt. And, I really think what we're learning in this experience, which a great global pandemic was decades overdue. I know within our organization, we had one of the very first cases in all of Saskatchewan, our head office, was an employee of ours, a senior executive. And he was ill. We put our pandemic plan in. I'd had a pandemic plan that's been updated for 25 years in place. And I'll never forget what he said to me when he recovered. And he said, "You always told us this was going to happen." And the leaders in the sports world and the business world in general, they have been exactly that in this circumstance. They have led through this. The government didn't tell them to shut down their league. They didn't tell them to quarantine themselves, as organizations. It was golf shut down, hockey shut down, basketball. They were all very quick to understand the importance of the social license under which they operate. And
Right.
I have yet to hear anyone talk about that. But I mean, these are very responsible business people who said, it's not just taking care of our employees, it's our fans, and it's our
Right.
impact on society. So I think they've been tremendous leaders. It's ground to a halt. It's a screeching halt. I'm looking forward.
Yeah.
I'm doing one of these with a couple of my employees who are big NFL fans tonight, and we're going to have virtual drinks and watch the NFL draft. But
Yeah.
but I think they've been incredibly responsible. They've led us
Right.
kind of into this, and hopefully on the way out, they'll be equally responsible in terms of not pushing the envelope
Yeah.
and thinking about the safety of society first.
Yeah. And I mean, I know we talk a lot about mental health and the significance and importance of it, not just in the general setting of the workplace, but as in the broader setting that a lot of people look to entertainment and look to sport, as a way to stay healthy and mentally and physically. What are you like, where are you seeing that being a challenge right now? I mean, what are your general thoughts there?
I would tell you that some of the few things I ever watch on television are live sports. I think it's the reason
Yeah.
that the networks still exist is because they still
Yeah.
host live sports, and it is something that brings people together. It gets you to be a
Yeah.
fan, to cheer, to be loyal to a brand or a team, and it is part of the mental health of people. They need that. Really, sometimes it's that cathartic thing when you participate in a sport, but many
Mm.
times it's watching football. It brings out a different side of people. A perfectly calm, cool, collected, quiet person can go to a football game and be someone else. It allows you, it liberates you a little bit to be something that you
Yeah.
maybe aren't. Go to a Premier League
Yeah.
game and watch them chant and sing, and that's not what they're doing at work. It's not what they're doing in
Yeah.
their homes. And so, obviously it has a huge impact on people's mental health to be able to
Yeah.
have that. And anyone who actually is watching television these days, or they're streaming Netflix, they're doing this, but they're yearning for the authenticity of sport, the
Right.
spontaneous nature of
Yeah.
sport, and the unpredictability of the outcome. And so I think that sport will pull us together out of this, like it did out of 9/11, which, I thought I managed our business through 9/11. I thought that was the black swan event of my management life. I was wrong. This is clearly it.
Yeah.
And while we're still early days, and I know nobody wants to hear it, but we're talking about human lives here. And we are
Yeah.
talking about human lives on the economic, from an economic standpoint, from a mental health standpoint, and then physically from a death and dying standpoint. No one alive has been through this before. And so, you look at your television set and you go, there's nothing to watch because
Yeah.
there aren't sports. For people that like sports, that's really something that engages them. And it's not just
Yeah.
team sports. It's not the traditional, there's no Olympic trials. You know what? The people that are fans of track and field or figure skating or anything, there's nothing. We're watching reruns. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
it reinforces the Groundhog Day feel that this shutdown is put into so many people's heads. And
Oh,
it,
for
it
sure.
does feel like Groundhog Day.
Yeah, I think I believe that sports organizations play such a critical role in not just, as I said, the Canadian marketplace, but in the, around the world. I feel that sports organizations now, people look to, brands as leaders and look to these organizations to be, as you said, at the forefront of having this really great level of corporate social responsibility. What role do you think these brands will play in the go forward, and what where do you see the sport and entertainment cycle going, especially given that we're expecting that maybe there's not going to be a cure or a vaccine for COVID-19 until potentially the summer of next year? Where do you see this go forward, and what do you see it looking like?
Well, I would tell you, I'm generally, in times like this, one of the most positive thinkers you're going to run across. So I'm optimistic, but I also have to temper it with the science that I have and say we've been looking for a vaccine for AIDS, which is a virus, for 35 years. A vaccine may never come. A treatment will come. Immunity will come. I'm looking forward, optimistic that we will return. Right now, we're going to adjust to what I call 3N, which is the new not normal. Like, it's going to always feel like it's not normal, but that will become something we can at least grow accustomed to. So, I think moving forward, you'll see some of what sport will do, when it's getting fans back in. First, they want to do it without fans. So if they can do it safely and
Hmm.
reasonably, it provides entertainment and will help unite people and lift us back up together.
Right.
Also, I think they have a moral and social obligation, and they all know it, um, to be doing more for COVID relief efforts, for food banks, for our most vulnerable in society, because it's hard to trot out a bunch of multimillionaires to play a sport so that they can become multimillionaires. This has to be a societal haircut. Everybody's getting a haircut right now. Government's getting a haircut. Business is getting a haircut. Employees are getting a haircut. Every level of government has to do this. It's a shared, we have to go through burden sharing now, because this is not, while it's a tremendous crisis, the sacrifices are not like they were in World War II, or World War I. So we have to keep some level of historical perspective around it.
Right.
I think sports will come back and dedicate a significant amount of money on an ongoing basis to frontline healthcare workers, frontline um, essential service workers, which is everything from our food supply chain to your grocery store to the truckers. And I love
Yeah.
to hear them talking about that, because we are bending the curve. We are trying as best we can to lessen our healthcare system being
Right.
overwhelmed. I think sport gets it, and I think sport
Right.
will lead the
Right.
way in terms of fundraising. And I think that will make people actually embrace them that much more.
Yeah. I'm also finding it quite interesting that through this, I mean, before this, we were seeing a bit of an emergence of esports globally and franchises like the NHL taking equity stakes in esports. And, there's been platforms like TikTok that have really come into place and just have provided now, a platform for these people to be able to share information. I think I'm interested because I've seen some pretty cool stuff happen. As I said, the NHL taking a minority stake in an esports franchise, and I think there's through this also innovation will be a driver, and people will look to find other ways to engage with people. And I do believe that is a silver lining in this, is that it puts people in a position where they've got to look to be more creative about things. And so I'm interested to see where esports is going to land. I mean, I think there's lots of opportunities there, and I'm quite curious to see how that sort of explodes through this as well. So.
Yeah, I would say this is, I mean, it's clearly a massively emerging piece of the global sports kind of puzzle, and just that landscape of what's going on. So
Right.
I think that trend will continue uninterrupted. It will require maybe some additional innovation, and technology never ceases to amaze me with its ability to adapt,
Yeah.
um, and, and lend itself towards a solution to
Yeah.
whatever the given daily challenge is. So they'll continue to do that. I think, frankly, I've been a little surprised that it didn't evolve very rapidly during this.
Hmm.
But there are other fundamental challenges that they're having as well as.
Right.
Uh, but I think maybe non-traditional, but
Yeah.
non-traditional is going to become traditional, as we're all finding out.
Yes, absolutely. So I guess maybe we could talk a little bit about just the general business landscape. Like, it would be good to just get your perspective on what you see generally across Canada right now, and how we're handling, obviously the federal government's handling some of the regulations around, and the provinces are handling sort of this scaling approach. And we're just seeing, for example, Saskatchewan starting to talk about get back to some level of scalability. Like, how do you see this rolling out and impacting the business community?
Well, obviously, this is, the GDP is going to take a massive hit during this quarter,
Yeah.
and I don't see it being a V recovery. I mean, I think we have to understand that we're going to live with COVID for some period of time here. We
Yeah.
may slow down the infection rate and slow down
Right.
the death rate, but the
Right.
quantum is going to end up at the same place without
Right.
a an effective treatment. The end result is going to be the end result. So I do understand the pressure to get the economy open. I'm not one of those ones that thinks it's huge to do. Now, I don't want it to sound self-serving. We're in some essential industries and we're still functioning. Our sports
Yeah.
business is effectively not functioning.
Yeah.
So that's the benefits of diversification, is you don't have all your eggs in one basket. Um, I would say this, that I would err on the side of caution. The government's taking on tremendous debt. I think they made a lot of very major missteps early on by not going to employers first. They had a 10% subsidy, then it was a 75% subsidy.
Yeah.
After 1.5 million people were laid off, you can't make it easier for the employer to lay someone off, or for employees who actually walked in and asked to be laid off. I know business people who had employees asked to be laid off so they could get the curb because they'd make more money. You have to trust employers and hold them accountable. So what they're doing now, I think, is much better. We'll see what they do with commercial rent relief program. Have businesses run it. We're the tax collector. We're the one that has all the information. We pay our people. We withhold taxes. We remit it to the government for no
Right.
compensation. We're the most efficient organizations in the world. Government should be using us to do what they want and holding us accountable, and they can audit us and everything else. But that is the way to keep us connected to our people. What we don't
Right.
want to emerge from this with is is a country that feels more dependent than ever before on government, because government will emerge from this with less ability to do things for people than ever in their history.
For sure.
We're going to be paying these debts off. Your generation, quite frankly, is going to be paying these debts off for 70 or 80 years. And so I think we need to be cautious. We need to get the economy going. We need to not stifle growth. Repatriating our manufacturing base is a massive opportunity right now. We should be bringing back those essential things that we've outsourced to other countries around the world. I won't name them, other countries, lots of them, and say, hey, Canadians, are you prepared to pay 10% more to have this and know that we've got a stable supply? Utilize it now to build our manufacturing base, to promote immigration to our country, to build solid middle-class jobs, and offer those businesses that are coming back long-term tax breaks and incentives to bring their plants from China and India and other places back to Canada.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, and one thing that's, it's an interesting perspective, but one thing that I've found interesting about that too is that, when we're sort of looking at the economy and generally like what I guess the rollback plan looks like I do believe there's going to be a massive, massive, massive focus in Canada from not only the federal level, the provincial level, to consume Canadian product, buy Canadian product, to travel within your own provincial borders, to access your own provincial parks, to, be a part of the Canadian economy, a contributor, oil disbursement, buying and selling from province to province, and actually trying to create a system where we can be more self-reliant. I do believe that's going to come out of this. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there. You said manufacturing. I think there's a massive opportunity there to really see some innovation come out of that, and for us to take the lead on things. I think we're agile enough as an economy, I believe, that we can be the leader in some of these initiatives and start to diversify ourselves as well. So I mean, I'm curious to see how that sort of rolls out, and I'm hopeful that we're going to see some uptake there for sure.
It's interesting, Andrew. I'm just gonna chime in there, because that would be a 180-degree difference for this government if they take that approach, because they've been globalists. We are very much not wanting to offend China and other countries, and I get that, but at the end of the day, I think what we've learned from this, and what will end up happening, and rightfully so in some ways, is a deglobalization of economies, because this dependence for PPE and many other things, frankly, in our supply chain. We're an exporting country, so we look at that and we go, well, we want open markets so that we can sell our canola and our wheat and our everything else. If you want to start the deglobalization, why don't we do it right now when there are negative prices on the oil produced in our country, and say we're putting 100% or 300 or 500% tariff on imported oil? Like, I would say that the first thing you do is charity begins at home. Why are we sending our money to foreign countries? And not, I don't want to get in the pipeline debate, but I mean, we are a resource economy. So that would be a way to signify to people that, you know what, we're open for business, but we're going to take care of ourselves first. So we'll see if it actually is a big pivot. I'd welcome a big pivot in many ways, but I don't know that it's politically as viable as it is probably prudent.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think a theme that we've spoken about before is just the role of business owners, business leaders, in taking extreme ownership. And I guess I want to get some perspective on what advice are you giving your senior people as you're navigating through this? I mean, given there's so much uncertainty right now, what advice are you giving your people about how to manage the day-to-day? And also, I mean, I know you engage with a large distribution network of suppliers. I'm sure you're having, conversations with them daily about all sorts of different things. What advice what are you seeing there as well?
Well, what I would tell you, I'm telling our people, and I mean, well, it really starts at the very front line. So I've made a habit of, I sent out all the updates to our staff spread all over North America, and coming from me directly. It's not coming from a generic account. They
Right.
can give me feedback directly. So we want to be engaged, because without those frontline people, we wouldn't be functioning right now. So
Yeah.
it's about preserving their jobs and their opportunity in the future. It's also
Right.
preserving our business continuity. I tell my management teams, pretty simply, which is these are times where the last thing I want to hear coming out of their mouth is, well, we used to, or this is the, no, everything's changed now. Embrace change like you've never done it before. Everything's going to be new. You got to put one foot ahead of the other, breathe
Right.
in and out, and focus on the horizon. It's like being on a ship. If you're not focused on the horizon, you end up throwing up because it's
Yeah.
turbulent times. You keep your eyes on the horizon, you generally can keep your head about things. I tell them, don't don't have fear to make decisions, and any decision you're not comfortable making, bring it to me. I think they need to know, one, they're supported. Two, we haven't laid off a single employee. And in our 52 years, we haven't laid off an employee for lack of work in 52 years. And as I told my 87-year-old father, when he asked me the other day how I was doing, I said, well, I'll tell you one thing. That's our history. We haven't laid anyone off. It's sure as hell not going to happen on my watch. So I think that's pulling everyone together, understanding that first person off the payroll was me. Day
Yeah.
one. It was like, remove me from the payroll.
Yeah.
I don't need any money from this business. Leadership starts at the top. This is about keeping jobs for our 850 employees. So, it's really about giving them perspective.
Yeah.
We're going to focus internally on those frontline people and on
Right.
them as people. They're going through great anxiety right now.
Yeah.
I'm not normally the cheerleader in chief. That's just not my business style. I have
Yeah.
morphed myself into that now because that's what's required. And I think if you're going to be a decent leader, you have to morph into what your people need, not what you need or what you think you should be. You got to give them what they need. And
Yeah.
so it's been a change for me. And that's been our way of saying we got to be nimble, we got to be agile. And if every day we're not thinking about what's right for our people from a safety perspective, from a confidence perspective, then we're focused on the wrong things. Because if we're not doing that for our people, we can't be doing it for our clients.
Yeah. No, hey, that makes a lot of sense. And I think just from my perspective too, you know, as I said, there's really a lot of uncertainty right now, and I think from my perspective, one thing that I've noticed that I've seen across the country, we've got a lot of good leaders out there that are really finding unique ways to engage with their employees and help them sort of navigate through these challenging times. I don't think there's a playbook out there that can walk you through how to
Yeah.
deal with this. And I think each business uniquely is facing so many challenges in a variety of ways. And one thing that I've noticed by chatting with people across the country is that this is touching everybody. This isn't just impacting one certain subset of the population. It's impacting everybody. And with that have come a variety of different methods and systems for dealing with getting through this. And I think there's so many industries that are really being impacted in an absolutely just devastating way. I mean, we're seeing, in Ontario, we're seeing obviously that the hospitality industry, restaurants, there's so many cases out here where, they're not going to be able to open again. And we're also seeing transit as well. Transit's almost down up to 90% across Canada. And I mean, obviously transit systems are obviously in, a diabolical state right now as well. I think the role that the community has to play is figuring out how do we instill consumer confidence again. And I think that's a big challenge. And I don't think that's something that you solve overnight. And I think it is going to be quite progressive. So I'm interested to see, some of these leaders, how they approach that. I think obviously some of it, as you said, is going to come down to treatment. It's going to come down to the ability to ease the population and make them feel safe. But it's also going to come from good systems and the ability to test quickly, to identify, COVID in places, and to be able to set up situations where people can feel comfortable engaging with businesses again. I really don't think it's going to be a light switch at all. So,
No, for sure it won't be. And I think what people need to understand is, and our politicians need to understand it's got to be a science-based approach to doing this moving forward. Like
Yeah.
you can't use the farmer's almanac to set opening dates or throw darts at a calendar and say this is the day we're going to open X, Y, or Z. There have got to be metrics around our ability to test, our ability to trace contact tracing, having the resources to do that so that when it does
Yeah.
flare up, it can be contained, because we're going to live with this. Well, we'll live with it for the rest of our lives. But when a vaccine comes, God willing, we'll get one. That's a game changer. Until then, the virus is the game changer. And so we just need
Yeah.
to build consumer confidence is around them knowing that if you keep social distancing of 6 feet, minimum 6 feet, let's say 8 feet, 8 feet's better, 80 feet's even better than that. We're going to have to say maybe restaurants open and you have proper physical distancing. I call it physical distancing because that's what it is. I can talk over 8 feet. That's socially, I'm not distanced. I'm physically separated. We'll
Yeah.
have to do that for some period of time and
Yeah.
measure and test and measure. And people's
Yeah.
confidence will come back as long as as long as they start to regain their mojo. So they start to regain some of that confidence that they're not
Yeah.
afraid of other people. We have to change the mindset from I'm afraid of everyone else to I'm wearing this mask or I'm keeping my distance to protect you, not to protect me from you, to protect you from me. I may be asymptomatic and giving this to you. If everyone's respectful and takes that personal responsibility and that viewpoint, we get a
Yeah.
lot way we get a lot farther down the road to confidence, because we will become accustomed to these things, and gradually over time we lessen them all. But
Yeah.
we've made plans for our offices to be remote working for a year to 18 months. I know nobody
Yeah.
wants that. I don't want that. But through a rotation of people, through some shared burden sharing on working from home, I had to actually argue with my management teams because they brought me these work from home plans. And I was like, you don't have enough people at home. You don't have enough people. Nobody wanted to go home. And now that
Yeah.
they're working from home, they don't want to work from home. So we have to
Yeah.
adapt. So we're opening up remote locations. We're opening up things so we can keep physical spacing. We're adding expense to do it, but our employees have to feel safe. They have to know we're doing all the right things. And then, you know what? If everybody was in a position that could do that, did it, you'd have a lot more confidence. Maybe you don't go to the theater, but you probably watch Netflix that you don't want to go to a theater for a while. But
Right.
but you want to go out for drinks. You know what? You want to go out for dinner with someone. You want to break.
Yeah.
You want to see your family members. I have not given my dad a hug in 7 weeks now, or my mom. And yeah, we're humans. We need that human interaction. So you
Yes.
kind of have to you gotta hug your wife extra, or you hug your kids extra, or, whoever you're with is the person you're with, and that's where you need to get all of that kind of human connection from. And I continually say in our memos, smile. You know what? You may be physically distant, smile, be kind to someone.
Yeah.
Let's make You have to emerge from this. With my senior managers, this is my mantra every day. You're going to judge yourself, and you're going to be judged on what we do during these times. Make sure
Right.
when you look back, we're proud of what we did.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great sentiment, David. Yeah, this is actually a great segue. I'd love to chat with you about the initiative of March Matchness, and I'd love to obviously bug you with some questions on this because I think it's a fantastic initiative,
Sure.
and I really want to dive into it. But obviously for those who aren't aware of what it is, maybe just give us a brief overview of your motivation. Where did this come from, and maybe walk us through the idea behind it.
Sure. Well, this started actually the day they canceled March Madness, which is the NC2A men's basketball tournament, 64 teams. And I was at home with my wife, and I said, honey, I got this idea. I was thinking, you know what? These are very tumultuous times, and our people are very anxious, and we've separated ourselves, and there's not much human connection. So I thought, I'm a very conservative dresser at work. I'm a suit and tie every day guy, and I have lots of wore colorful clothes and my golf attire and some other things that I'd wear casually. And I said to her, you know what I'd like to do is everybody would be on their computers at work anyway, watching March Madness when it's on. I said, and we don't get it this year. So what if every day I dress in a different outfit with the wild school colors from each of the 64 schools? And I'll just send a picture out to our staff and they can guess what I'm wearing. It would just show me stepping outside of my comfort zone during these times and trying to bring a little levity to it. So it started as an idea to do that. And a couple of days later, I hadn't quite launched it yet. I launched it for one day. I was having dinner with my wife, Heather, and I said, honey, I got a crazy idea and tell me what you think of it. Because she's not on any social media.
Right.
She's not on anything. And I said, you know what if I do a Facebook, Instagram, Twitter campaign, and I do this and I agree to give $500 in the city in the US where that school resides.
Right.
One of the 64 schools that I'm dressed up as today. Today,
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you because there's an
Yeah.
office pool and I'd get in trouble. But and then I'll give $500 to a food bank somewhere in Canada, and I'll call it March Matchness and encourage people to match it in any way they can to a local food bank because there's such demand for it right now. And she
Right.
gave me the thumbs up. She said, you do it. And so I think I'm on day 25 now of
Yeah.
64. And my goal is to never wear the same outfit. There's a lot of red, white, and blue schools. You change it up every thing. And then I posted on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and the schools have gotten behind it. I think University of Oregon retweeted it. Their men's basketball team too. It ended up getting 100,000 impressions within an hour.
Yeah.
Just thinking that, gosh, if it can make one person think of a food bank and give some money to a local food bank right now, we can do some good and bring some laughter and levity to obviously very difficult times for people.
Right. No, for sure. And I think on that, one thing that's been fantastic is that, we've seen that, obviously the food banks across Canada, they're under a lot of stress and pressure right now, and they're trying to do what they can. But what I really loved about this campaign is that it's really created that fun link between sport and entertainment, and the notion of March Madness no longer being in effect at the moment. It's got those schools to be engaged, and it's also helped just to raise awareness across Canada and the US. And for us, we just thought that was a fantastic way that you're contributing to not just your local economy, but you're contributing to those who need it most across Canada and the US. And I think it's a fantastic program. I must admit, I don't think you were totally honest there about some of your outfits, because I've seen some days you're a little bit cheeky with your watch selection or cufflinks, and there's some secret hints there that not all of us NC2A fanatics can actually pick up on. So no, I think
Well,
it's
I want to thank you guys. I want to thank you guys for matching
yeah,
in to the Ottawa Food Bank, and
yeah,
it's just it's so humbling when you get the response back from these food banks because they don't know you and they see you're in Saskatchewan, Canada, and you're giving in Little Rock, Arkansas, and it's just meaningful to them. It's a little bit
yeah,
of touch of humanity during it, and it's a bit fun. Like they're having fun. I have a neighbor. We have a home in California, and she's in her 80s. I get an email from her yesterday. I didn't know she was an Oregon Duck. Her son had seen this online. I don't even know her son. How he saw it was probably because the men's basketball team retweeted it, sent her
yeah,
the picture of me, and her foundation gives to the same food bank I gave to. Her friend works there, and it's just creating these little bonds and
yeah,
linkages that can make us remember that this too shall pass, and the fact that I can be a little self-deprecating and show people it's really, to me, $64,000 is not an inconsequential amount of money, but it's not about the money. It's the effort that goes into every day of the week, 7 days a week, putting that
yeah,
outfit together and contacting that school and telling them I'm highlighting them and what the story is. It gives me something to look forward to every day. That's not a massive challenge.
yeah,
It's sometimes, that the feeling of giving and of doing for people and of service to our employees, and that's the greatest satisfaction that you can get. So I have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, and I think it's been great. And like one thing that I talk about and I've spoken about with a lot of people during this time is just the notion of paying it forward. There's so many people that are really in tough times right now. And I think introspectively, if we all look at where we're at, there's always somebody else out there that's doing a lot worse than we are. And so it's really about, how can we contribute and how can we really help people that really need it most. So, what I'd love to just throw a shout out here just regarding this campaign is just to say that, for anyone who's listening, people that are, it doesn't matter where you are in Canada or in the US, I'd really appreciate that, you engage with the hashtag March Matchness on Twitter and, connect with your food bank, follow along with David's campaign. I think it's a fantastic way to contribute, and every little, every dollar helps. Doesn't matter the size of the donation, it helps. Um, most food banks see every dollar turned into $5 worth of food. So, I mean, if you look at the math on that, it's an incredible amount of food to help those that are in need. And, as I said, if you'd like to get more info, feel free to bug me about it. I'd be more than happy to connect you in the right places.
Or you can follow
Yeah.
me on Twitter at LDD9T, and
Yes. There
you
you
can
go.
watch the daily wardrobe show that's going on.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well, David, thank you so much for your time, and I know you're a busy man, and I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to connect. And again, stay safe and keep taking care of your people, and we look forward to connecting with you further. And just to give everybody a heads up, next week we'll have a second episode of the show, and looking forward to continuing this weekly for the next 10 weeks. So that's it from me, and thanks, David.
Thanks, Andrew. It was a pleasure.
Okay.